This is Living Planet. I'm Neil King. There's this rumour going around, you may have heard it, that we humans are somehow separate from the animals, trees, earth and water amongst which we walk. Separate and superior. Well, this week we're bringing you another instalment of our Naturally Connected series to dispel this myth and help you reconnect with this planet of which we're all a part. By inviting you to see the unseen, the unsung, and the underappreciated parts of the natural world through new eyes, we hope to offer a chance to slow down for a moment and enjoy parts of the natural world we often race past in our busy lives. So, we're heading to the desert, of all places, to walk amongst the red rocks of southern Utah in search of new perspectives. And along the trail, our reporter Sam Baker grapples with the prejudices many of us have against our own species.
When I was a child, my parents took a trip to the Canyonlands. I was very jealous because my young brain had understood that they were going to the mythical land of the board game Candyland. It wasn't until I was an adult myself, camping among the majestic red rocks of southwest Utah, that I realized this place was Candyland. A Candyland for the eyes, a Candyland for the soul. This part of the country is unlike any other, perhaps unlike any place in the world. Stranded red islands and imposing rock walls jettison up, drawing stark contrast to the bright blue sky. Standing in deep canyons of clear, dry heat, one is reminded that you're just a fish in a very large sea of life. Or desert. That first time I came to this part of the country, I went backpacking in Canyonlands National Park, climbing up and down tall, smooth walls of rock, following meandering gravel washes left by those rare instances of desert rain. These 3 days, with just the food, water, and shelter we needed on our backs, were followed by a quick shower and motel reprieve in the fabled hippie mecca of Moab. Just a single day of our trip was left for a visit to the comparatively smaller Arches National Park, a crown jewel in the American treasures that are our national parks. But visiting Arches, we were met with a line of cars just to get into the park, followed by overcrowded parking lots and trails brimming with tourists. We were tightly packed sardines, not fish in a deep ocean. I hiked out to see a few of these arches that hug you like a mammoth creature in a children's book. But on that trip to Arches 7 years ago, I didn't take a picture beneath the famous delicate arch. I thought it was basic and tacky. In the end, I left this park feeling overwhelmed by the scourge of humanity. It was an emotional letdown after days hiking through what seemed like real wilderness. If I ever returned, I vowed, I'd get to the park entrance before dawn. Seven years later, I wander back to this magical part of the western U.S., determined to give the park a second try. Driving into Moab is an awe-inspiring experience. Turning off a somewhat desolate highway, I start descending into red rock walls rising up on either side of the road. Their beauty is breathtaking and encompassing. I have to actively remind myself to keep my eyes on the road, not to be too dumbstruck that I accidentally drift into the next lane or hit a roving tumbleweed. Just before reaching the town, I turn left into the park entrance. I drive back into the park past smooth rocks that seem to stand straight up all on their own, creating formations that look like gargoyles peering down from above, or a group of giants huddled together gossiping. One is just an enormous rock staggeringly perched atop another, appropriately named Balanced Rock. But today is not about taking in the sights. I've got an appointment to get to. At a popular trailhead, I meet Karen Garthwaite, a park ranger with Arches and Canyonlands National Parks. Karen certainly looks the part in her uniform of a gray shirt with double-breasted pockets and a gold ranger badge. A dark green tie matches her dark green pants, and she wears her hair in an impressively long braid that flows out from under an iconic, broad-brimmed ranger hat. As I look around, this park is looking the part too. It's not coy. It really is full of arches.
So yeah, Arches National Park was established for the preponderance of natural stone arches. It's believed that there are more here than anywhere else in the world. And I think that that comes about from really four things. We have the right kind of rock, sandstones. Sandstone is like a big sponge. Water can soak down through it and dissolve the minerals from inside it. And if it does that in just the right way, you can punch a hole right through the rock. The other factor would, of course, be time. Geologically speaking, these rocks are on the surface now. But for much of their existence, they were deeply buried under over a mile of rock that has already eroded from here. So you got the right kind of rock. We're here at the right time. A lack of earthquakes, because otherwise all these things would be coming down around our ears. But generally speaking, it's a pretty geologically stable area. And then I guess the water itself, right? If we never had rainfall, that would kind of stop the engines of erosion that are creating this landscape.
It's funny to think that water has played such a key role in this place that appears so parched. But 100 million years is a generous amount of time for any sculptor.
We are standing among, I want to say Cretaceous era rocks, so old. It's been just about everything you can imagine. So ancient sand dune deserts, shorelines underneath the water, ancient lake beds that have evaporated. All those things have happened here. For much of the Earth's history, this area was at sea level just collecting debris. Fast forward hundreds of millions of years, that's the rock we're looking at. So many of the sandstones that dominate the landscape here were literally ancient sand dune deserts, kind of like today's Sahara Desert.
There are petrified dunes visible as you drive into the park, sand dunes frozen in time. But it's the arches people come to see. One in particular.
People come into the front desk and ask to see the arch. That is how deeply associated that one natural landform has become with this park, or even the state of Utah itself. And I love thinking about all the coffee mugs and refrigerator magnets around the world, just reminding people of that one place.
Well, it's on the license plates here, too.
Exactly. License plates, street signs, you name it.
As the image of this natural feature became as famous as a masterpiece in the Louvre, it's perhaps no wonder this park has become so popular over the years.
So when I started working here back in 2006, Arches was getting about 800,000 visitors a year. We jumped to 1.8 million in 2021. And a big part of that was the COVID effect. We saw huge quantities of first-time visitors coming out to all of these Western national parks.
Something I desperately miss since moving to Europe are the wide open spaces that can be found in the US. Growing up, I had the good fortune to play make-believe and canoe and hike in the Northwoods of Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan, where I learned to enjoy solitude in the forest with just the squirrels or owls or a distant loon as company. But I've also learned that this time in nature, away from computers or phones, makeup or television, was a magical opportunity to connect with other people, even strangers, over a snack break on the trail or an evening bonfire. Over the course of these Northwoods summers, I also came to see myself as outdoorsy. Later, after college, I jumped at an opportunity that got me to Alaska. Among people who ran up mountains and raised dog sled teams and skied in the backcountry, I had to readjust my sense of self. I wasn't so outdoorsy after all. At best, here I was normal. Often when I'd go hiking with these truly outdoorsy people, a deciding factor as to which route we'd take was how popular it was. "There's too many people on that trail," was a common refrain that would doom any particular path. These hikers wanted real wilderness. But that idea never sat quite right with me. To not want to walk past other people just because the sight of them ruined your fantasy that you're in some sort of pristine wilderness. If it's a good trail, wouldn't you expect others to be there too? Or did my friends just want to prove that they were more intense, more hardcore, more outdoorsy than the masses? I head up the trailhead to see the arch, Delicate Arch as it's actually called. I've seen it before, 7 years ago, but today I'm here to see other people seeing it. It's about 1.5 miles up to the arch. Not a crazy, difficult hike technically, but one that will make you sweat even on a cool day like this one. The trail is full of people, and along the way I overhear snippets of conversation. A little boy tells his grandfather, "Just take little steps, just take little steps," while simultaneously grabbing onto his grandfather's walking sticks and pulling them, and him, forward. I hear Spanish, German, Russian, Chinese, and Japanese. Occasionally, I lag behind to put some space between myself and the other hikers, to enjoy a little more peace in which to appreciate an eye-catching rock or the minty green-colored hills in the distance, covered with small shrubs and living soil crusts. Eventually, I too make it to the arch. It's windy up here, and busy.
But people are mostly happy here. There are a few complainers and a few who weren't fit enough to make it up the hike, but it seems that the majority persevere and their efforts are worth it. And once they get here, the arch amazes them. But they don't seem to spend much time soaking it in with their eyes, without a screen in front of their face.
Some people take a seat away from the ledges that are high enough to make them nervous. Others take a snack break. A Hopi chipmunk scuttles up the rock to grab a discarded apple core. Many, if not most people here, make their way to a line that's formed off to the left to take their picture under the monumental arch. The wait in line gives them time to plan their photo. One young couple in hiking gear do what I think of as the wedding day pose, where the woman jumps into the man's arms and he holds her up. I try not to roll my eyes.
Families and friends wait in line to snap that photo that will be their Christmas card photo or will be framed to sit on the mantelpiece. It shows that they were here, that they did this, that they saw this. But it makes me wonder what people did when they encountered these structures before cameras. Was the experience less about them and more about their own smallness in the landscape? Was it not about them at all?
As I hike back down, a stream of humans washes over the smooth sandstone rock face on their way to the parking lot, where a few of them will be accosted by a nosy reporter asking them what brought them here today.
The view is very special, the view is very different from anywhere in the world, so that is most attractive.
I want to see, I don't know, how are the things right here, the colors, the forms, and it's like being another planet.
Yeah.
It's very good.
We were just talking about our lifespans in comparison to how long it takes to make all of this, and just how that doesn't often compute for us, how long this was here before any of us and how much that landscape could have changed in all of that time.
Much more scenic out here than in Iowa. It's just amazing to the scale of these kind of things. Standing out on the ridges and just seeing the massive canyons it's so easy to get lost in the beautiful scenery. I think being here it's just a great reminder of how beautiful the world in this country is. I like to say to myself that the best way to love America is to go and see it, and this trip is definitely a great example of that.
People have been coming here and traversing all over these landscapes for a long, long time. Park Ranger Karen Garthwaite again.
So in terms of the human history of the Arches National Park landscape, there are around a dozen contemporary federal American Indian tribes that draw an association with this landscape. And many of them would say they have been in this place since time immemorial. Archaeologists have a different epistemological approach, and both of those things are right. So what archaeologists have determined is a presence here at least 10 to 12,000 years. They have found spearheads from the cultures that hunted the woolly mammoth right in this area. Hard to imagine with what it looks like now. And this place has probably been pretty much continuously either occupied, traveled across, seasonally hunted, a little bit of agriculture ever since then.
Karen shows me some traces of those who've come before us.
So the Rock Images panel in front of us here shows a figure on horseback on the left with about a half dozen desert bighorn sheep gathered around. There are also some quadrupeds that could be dogs. This place was probably a trading and a mixing zone of multiple cultures at the same time. So the cultures that created Chaco and the Mesa Verde structures down to the south, this would have been part of their trading zone. There was some other cultures that lived to the north and west of here. So they would have been mixing throughout that time. By the time Europeans, settlers, and explorers came through, the Ute, Paiute, and Navajo were dominant in this area.
It's when we consider this stream of humans, not just the visitors traversing this landscape today, but those who've been coming here forever, that the man-made walls of wilderness start to crumble. One big problem with the veneration of wilderness is that it tricks us into thinking that these are pristine landscapes, untouched and unshaped by humans, because they might lack the markers of contemporary society.
The cultural history of a place like Arches surprises a lot of visitors because you don't see big structures all over the place. But some evidence that they have left behind would be things like worked stones, spear points, or the little flakes that come off when you're making a worked stone. I love when I'm hiking out on a trail and I find a beautiful shady spot and I sit down because I'm going to have my snack, and then I realize someone sat here thousands of years ago to do a chore like making a new arrowhead. They don't have TV to sit in front of. They have the view and the shade, and I love that connection.
Having spent a lot of time around people with a perpetually packed go bag, ready for weekend excursions to places with no cell service, I know wilderness is something many of us seek. We think we know what it looks like, the opposite of humans. But humans are a part of this planet, whether we want to own up to that responsibility or not. And as I've learned from reporting on the environment over the years, there aren't any landscapes on this planet that are untouched by humans in some way. Despite rejecting the myth of wilderness, I do still crave this thing, even if I lack an appropriate word for it. Maybe our desire to have time alone with nature isn't dissimilar from wanting time alone with loved ones, one-on-one time without distractions. And as we've heard, I'm not the only one who seeks this. Much to my amazement, and despite the full parking lots, Arches National Park is not in the top 5 most visited parks in the U.S., not even in the top 10.
Arches National Park is not even in the top 30 in terms of visitation. However, I do feel like Arches National Park has a lot of passionate repeat visitation. And we see so many people who come back year after year to reclaim that sense of inspiration, the joy, the play that they have when they're here.
Visitors like Abe Springer.
I've been here many times over my lifetime. It's a fun time to come revisit.
You've been here many times? Yeah, what does this park mean to you?
Well, everybody's read Edward Abbey, and if you read Desert Solitaire, that'll get you here, but there's many reasons to come here beside that.
Of course, not everyone's read Edward Abbey, but his legacy looms large in this part of the world and among a certain generation of outdoorsy people. Abbey was a famous environmental writer and at one point in time a park ranger here in Arches. His book Desert Solitaire, A Season in the Wilderness, shares tales of adventure and poetic descriptions of this area's plants and animals, weather, and waterways. Some have called Abby prickly. I think he was a curmudgeon, along with being racist, sexist, elitist, and occasionally making an interesting point. For his part, Abby admits that much of his book about this region will seem coarse, rude, bad-tempered, violently prejudiced, unconstructive, even, frankly, antisocial in its point of view. In the book, Abby frequently rails against industrial tourism and promotes the preservation of virgin wilderness, drawing a line in the sand between humans and everything else in the natural world. He writes, "Most of my wandering in the desert I've done alone, not so much from choice as from necessity. I generally prefer to go into places where no one else wants to go. I find that in contemplating the natural world, my pleasure is greater if there are not too many others contemplating it with me." The funny thing is, by writing about this place, Abby helped create its myth, bringing more tourists to this part of the country. Tourists like this university student.
My name is Allie Rains. I go to college in Des Moines, Iowa at Drake University. My goal in life is to visit all 50 states and to visit all 62 national parks. Wow. And this trip is crossing off one state I haven't been to and 2 national parks I haven't been to. So,
for many like Allie, the national parks make up a good chunk of their bucket list. The most beautiful and preserved spots in America have, in some ways, become collector's items. And, well, I sort of cringe at this mentality. I also get it. These places are difficult to capture in words or even photos. I think you can only really experience them with your own eyes, your own physical body, which gets us back to that issue of too many bodies in one place, and back to Ranger Karen Garthwaite.
Arches has been trying to manage that dramatic growth in visitation for a number of years. And where we've landed recently is a pilot timed entry program, which has been in effect for 2 summers. This will be the 3rd year.
If you want to visit Arches National Park during high season, you'll need to sign up for an arrival time, or come before 7 in the morning or after 4 in the afternoon. I asked Karen, though, in light of a doubling of visitors in recent years, if the park has had to hire much more staff, or if demand has just been difficult to keep up with.
You probably know the answer to that question. Yeah, National Park Service budgets have not increased in parallel with these increases in visitation. We are very grateful for the support of our park partners, like our cooperative association. Every single t-shirt that people buy in those bookstores turns directly into help for the park, literally paying for dozens of staff members. That's fantastic. We also have a philanthropic partner that helps a lot too. But we've had to look to other potential solutions, things like timed entry, increasing the staff in parking lots just to help people manage the parking.
I buy a t-shirt to support the parks, one with check boxes on the back for parks visited. So far, I've got 14 out of 63. After my day in the park, observing and often judging others, I wake up the next morning determined to see the park itself, with less visitors.
It's 6:15. Okay, I'm getting up so I can get up to the arch early. Gonna make some coffee and gonna get up there. I did it. I got up early enough. I'm driving in the park. It's 7:45. The sun's just coming up, so it's just getting light. And it's like all these old sleepy rocks are waking up to another day, another batch of tourists coming to ogle them. But my God, it's beautiful out here. Driving in today with less going on. I'm not focused on the car in front of me or behind me or my GPS, and I'm noticing so many things in the landscape I didn't notice yesterday. Okay, I'm coming into the parking lot for the trailhead. There are a few cars here, but it is way less packed than yesterday. is really nice.
This morning, with a few less people on the roads and on the rocks, I am able to notice more in the park. There's sandy-colored rocks and brown rocks with black patina charring them. There's rocks with iridescent structures between them, glowing like an opal. And then there's walls and walls of beautiful red rocks, flat, bulbous, undulating, polished by rain and wind and time. I settle into the satisfying groove of hiking, going at the slow human speed where you're able to notice things you can't in a car. The smell of a juniper tree, or the sounds of tiny birds flitting beneath its branches, and, of course, other humans.
Even without very many people out here, I've only passed one person on the trail so far, you can still hear the sounds of humans. There's a plane way overhead. We're part of this landscape, whether we like it or not.
I make it up to Delicate Arch just before 9 a.m. There are a few people here, but nothing like yesterday. I take in the great stone arch in a new light, quite literally. In the distance, I see the sun breaking through patches in the clouds, spilling across red cliffs covered in green fuzz. I eat a bit of breakfast, perched on a rock, taking in the arch, while a couple of nearby ravens assess whether or not my breakfast is worth trying to steal. The other early birds I've hiked up with pass phones back and forth, taking pictures beneath the arch. This old arch doesn't get much of a rest, does it? Welcoming visitors with its arms all day long. It's like a year-round mall Santa. There is a momentary break in the photo line, though, and I'm able to capture a picture of the arch on its own, my own souvenir of this place. As I continue watching these visitors, I realize something. The people here are being so kind to each other, taking each other's photos, offering words of encouragement to those who are afraid of the heights, sharing stories, making new temporary hiking friends. I wonder if those that prefer to hike only on trails devoid of other humans are missing out on this quintessentially human, earthly experience of communing in nature. While there's certainly something to be said about finding some peace and quiet, maybe it's equally important to cultivate an inner peace and solitude, perhaps even joy, among other people. And with this, something in my mind clicks into place. Maybe the key to rebuilding our connection to the natural world isn't so much about reconnecting to the natural world, but about building and rebuilding our relationships with one another and seeing our fellow humans as part of the landscape. It reminds me of an experience the bubbly university student Allie shared with me yesterday, along with one of her travel companions, Garrett.
Up there today, there was a guy playing a guitar, which was just like magical. Wow.
I'd just say, it's the company that makes the trip.
Yeah, it was definitely an add to the ambiance, and to have like people to trade phones with, to take each other's pictures, and it was just like making friends. Even though you're not actively talking to everybody, you just know that you're safe around everybody else.
The memories that I'll get out of this trip are the moments I spent with other people.
In an increasingly divided country, national parks may be some of the last spaces where we hand our phone to a stranger and chat with people from other parts of the country, other political parties, other generations, other viewpoints to our own. Perhaps these places aren't so different to how people used them thousands of years ago. Congregating points for people from all across the land, an opportunity to exchange ideas and share cultures. And that seems like something worth celebrating. It's getting cool up by the arch. The wind sends a chill down my spine. But before heading back down the trail, I ask a family to take my photo. Because it might be another 7 years, or more, before I get back here. And as one visitor pointed out to me, you just never know what the future may hold.
One of the biggest driver for me to come out here is like the urgency of trying to catch a glimpse of it before it changes, because I know that some of the arches already fallen over the years. This actually, the landscape basically showcase one picture of a slow changing earth to everybody, I guess.
That's true. I never thought of it that way. Well, thank you so much and have a great trip. Perhaps my photo will inspire someone else to come and see this place with their own eyes. And I hope they do. The national parks belong to us citizens, after all. Getting to know the parks and seeing each other enjoying their wonders might just help us realize that there's more than just parks to save. One of the benefits to getting up early, aside from beating the crowds, is that you've still got time for another hike. After taking the path more traveled this morning, I decided to go find other less traveled paths and spend the rest of the day hiking trails that led me to arches I hadn't seen in countless reproductions. They were new and surprising and magnificent. And for that, I left my tape recorder in the car.
This episode of Living Planet was produced by Samantha Baker. It was edited by me, Neil King. Our sound engineer was Jürgen Kuhn. If you have any questions or story suggestions, please just send us a voice message or email to livingplanet@dw.com. While you're online, why not check out our DW Podcasts channel on YouTube, where you'll find plenty of bonus material and other great podcasts ranging from science to current affairs. We'll be back again next week with another naturally connected episode when Tamsin Walker will be delving into the fantastic world of foxes. Living Planet is brought to you by DW in Bonn, Germany.